All right, well, it's 6:31, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We are recording this session tonight so that we can post it on our website for people to view at their leisure. My name is Kelly Bone. I'm the superintendent of the Genoa City School District, and I welcome all of you to our session this evening. We'll be starting tonight with a presentation to give you some general information about the referendum, and then we'll be opening it up to question and answer.
Bienvenidos a todos. Estamos aquí esta noche para darles un poquito de información sobre el referéndum y al final de la presentación vamos a tener un momento para hacer preguntas y respuestas. Estamos grabando para que vean en su tiempo.
So we're going to start off tonight by just sharing a little bit the situation in Wisconsin and how referendum kind of plays a part in the Wisconsin school districts at this time.
Vamos a comenzar esta noche hablando de la situación aquí en Wisconsin y qué papel tiene el referéndum en las escuelas en este estado en este momento.
So 2 weeks from tonight, on April 6th, 68 school districts across the state are going to referendum. And of those 68, 32 are operational referenda like ours is.
En 2 semanas, 68 distritos escolares se van a ir a referéndum. Y de esos 68, hay 32 que se tratan de referendos operacionales como nuestro distrito.
The idea of operational referendum is certainly something that we've heard more and more about in recent elections. This slide shows a kind of a 10-year look back of the number of districts specifically that have gone to operational referenda.
Hemos escuchado mucho sobre los referendos operacionales recientemente. Esto nos da un visual sobre los referendos últimamente que han existido aquí.
This next slide really demonstrates that there's a number of districts that depend on have their revenue limit supplemented by non-recurring operating referendum. In fact, 72 districts this year have at least 10% of their revenue limit supplemented by non-recurring operating referendum.
Aquí vemos cómo las escuelas tienen una dependencia de los referendos. Por lo menos aquí hay 72 escuelas que dependen de un 10% de su límite de ingresos suplementado por referendos no recurrentes.
So those first couple of slides kind of cast the vision for the state of Wisconsin and how operating referenda are being used across the state by a number of districts. This next slide really talks about how that pertains directly to Genoa City.
Ya hemos visto cómo las escuelas en el estado de Wisconsin están afectados por los referendos y ahora vamos a mirar cómo está afectado nuestro distrito.
So in 1993, when the revenue caps in the state of Wisconsin were put in place, we were one of the lowest spending districts in the state.
Cuando se colocaron los límites de ingreso, el distrito nuestro era uno de los que menos gastaba en el estado.
And this is important because it means that our revenue at that time was capped at a very low level.
Eso es importante porque quiere decir que nuestro ingreso en ese momento estaba limitado a un nivel muy bajo.
State funding doesn't, although the state revenues have come up obviously between 1993 and now, that the increases in state revenue doesn't keep pace with the rate of inflation.
Aunque se haya aumentado, la financiación estatal no se mantiene al paso de la inflación.
And that creates a growing disparity between revenue and the school district's expenses.
Eso abre una brecha que sigue creciendo entre los ingresos y los gastos escolares.
Complicating that, the state funding formula is based on enrollment, and ours is declining.
Para complicar eso aún más, la financiación se basa en la matriculación escolar y la nuestra se está reduciendo.
So this next slide shows an overview of district enrollment over the last 5 years. You can see in 2016-17, we were at 670 students in the district. And in this year, 2021, we're at 601.
Aquí vemos la matriculación a través de los años y como pueden ver aquí en el año 2016-17 estábamos en 670 y ahora para el 2021 estamos en 601.
The main cause behind the declining enrollment is a lack of available housing and space for new families to move into the district.
La causa de esta reducción en matriculación es por la falta de disponibilidad de casas nuevas para que familias se muden a nuestro distrito.
So what have we done so far in the district to help the disparity between revenues and expenditures?
¿Qué hemos hecho hasta ahora en nuestro distrito para cerrar esta brecha entre los ingresos y los gastos escolares?
So we've applied for and received grant monies, over $100,000. And even though that sounds like a really large amount, that's really only supplemental in our school budget.
Hemos aplicado y hemos recibido subvenciones del gobierno de más de $100,000 y aunque eso suene como mucho, realmente eso es solamente para suplementar nuestros gastos.
We've also reduced or eliminated ongoing expenses that don't impact student programming. So when we have the chance to reduce some of those expenditures, that upgrading a phone system to eliminate ongoing expenses, doing some of those things that eliminate those ongoing charges, we've done that in ways that hasn't impacted student programming.
También hemos reducido o eliminado los gastos continuos mientras no impactan a la educación de nuestros estudiantes. Por ejemplo, en cuestión de renovar los teléfonos o los sistemas escolares, mientras no impacte a los estudiantes directamente, hemos reducido los gastos continuos.
We've also been careful to address ongoing maintenance issues as well as some cosmetic upgrades through the regular budget process and with some of those supplemental grant funds.
También hemos mantenido y mejorado los edificios utilizando los fondos de nuestro presupuesto general y con los fondos suplementarios de las subvenciones.
Although it's hard to believe our middle school is actually 20 years old.
Aunque sea difícil creerlo, nuestra escuela intermediana tiene más de 20 años.
So what you'll see on your ballot language on April 6th is the following.
Lo que va a ver en la papeleta del voto el 6 de abril es el siguiente.
Shall the Genoa City Joint 2 School District, Walworth County, Wisconsin, be authorized to exceed the revenue limit specified in Section 121.91 Wisconsin statutes by $500,000 for the 21-22 school year, by $700,000 for the 22-23 school year, and by $900,000 for the 2023-2024 school year for non-recurring purposes consisting of sustaining educational programming and school district operations.
Debe el Distrito Escolar Joint 2 de Genoa City, Condado de Walworth, Wisconsin, estar autorizado a exceder el límite de ingresos especificado en la sección 121.91 Estatus de Wisconsin por $500,000 para el año escolar 21-22, por $70,000 para el año escolar 22-23 y por $90,000 para el año escolar 23-24 para propósitos no recurrentes que consisten de mantener la programación educativa y las operaciones del distrito escolar.
So I'm going to switch screens for a minute because I'll show you the sample ballot.
Vamos a cambiar la pantalla para una muestra de la papeleta del voto.
So this is a sample of the ballot that you'll see on April 6th. On the front are local elections as well as the state superintendent of public instruction.
Este es un ejemplo de la papeleta que va a ver el 6 de abril. Adelante hay información sobre las elecciones estatales y locales del superintendente.
And then on the back of your ballot, you'll see 3 referendum questions. The first 2 referendum questions are for the Lake Geneva Genoa City Union High School District, or Badger High School. And the third referendum question is for our district, the Genoa City Joint 2 School District.
Atrás de la papeleta va a haber información sobre el referéndum, que se trata de Lake Geneva Genoa City High School District, que es Badger High, y la información específica del referendo de nuestro distrito está ahí, las 3 preguntas.
We want to make sure that everybody understands that it's not an either-or situation, and we hope that you answer all 3 questions.
Queremos que todo el mundo sepa que no es cuestión de sí y no. Pueden contestar las 3 preguntas y se les anima que conteste las 3.
And to find information about the first 2 questions, you can reference the Lake Geneva Schools website.
Para encontrar información sobre las primeras 2 preguntas, pueden acceder al sitio web de Genoa City.
All right. So why are the amounts different every year? The amounts vary each year to minimize the tax impact on our community.
¿Por qué están las cantidades diferentes cada año? Las cantidades se varían para tener el mínimo impacto en nuestra comunidad.
The most significant increase will be in the first year, and that amount will be less than 25 cents on the mill rate, which is a $25 tax increase for a $100,000 house.
El aumento más significativo será durante el primer año y esa cantidad va a ser menos de 25 centavos, o sea, como $25 en una casa que vale 100,000.
For the following years, the increase will be less than the 25%, and it honestly may drop off altogether.
En los siguientes años, ese aumento va a ser aún menos y honestamente es posible que se elimina del todo ese aumento.
Even with a maximum increase of 25 cents, the mill rate next year will still be less than it was in 2012.
Y si fuera permanecer el aumento de 25 centavos, aún representaría menos de lo que se pagaba en el año 2012.
So you can see the mill rates historical chart on this slide, going all the way from 2012, 2013, when the mill rate was $8.56, to our current mill rate this year, which was $7.59.
Aquí se ve el historial de la tasa de impuestos que se pagaba hasta atrás en el año 12 o 13 que se pagaba 8.56 y ahora más recientemente que se paga 7.59.
I want to call your attention to the 2016-17 mill rate of $7.62. That was the year we went to referendum with the building project at the elementary school, and we made a promise at that time to keep that mill rate at $7.62 for those 3 years, which we did, and even dropped off to $7.59 beyond that.
Quiero llamar su atención a los años 16 a 17, donde estaba la tasa de impuestos a 7.62, que fue cuando fuimos a un referendo de un proyecto de edificio. Le prometimos a la comunidad que se iban a mantener a ese precio durante 3 años y se mantuvo y después aún se redujo un poquito más.
So the big question is always, what happens if this referendum in 2 weeks doesn't pass?
La pregunta principal es que si no aprueban este referendo, ¿qué pasa?
So staffing is our largest expense, and reduction in staffing will mean larger class sizes and less opportunities for our students.
El gasto principal es del personal. La reducción de personal representaría un aumento en la cantidad de estudiantes por clase y menos oportunidades para nuestros estudiantes.
So in a small school, the loss of a teacher, either a total decrease or even a partial decrease, can result in a reduction of programming. So what that means is several of our teachers teach elective classes that if their position was eliminated or decreased, that program would just be eliminated.
En una escuela pequeña como la nuestra, perder un maestro, sea de tiempo completo o tiempo parcial, puede representar una reducción de programas y servicios para los estudiantes. Quiere decir que si hay un maestro que enseña una clase opcional, perder la oportunidad de trabajar con ese maestro eliminaría esa clase para nuestros estudiantes.
That's why when we talk about the importance of having the referendum pass, we talk about it to maintain our educational programming.
Por eso cuando hablamos de la importancia de aprobar el referéndum, se trata de mantener nuestra programación para los estudiantes.
We're proud as a small school to be able to offer the diverse amount of programming that we can for our students.
Tenemos orgullo de poder, como una escuela pequeña, ofrecer la cantidad de programación tan diversa que ofrecemos a nuestros estudiantes.
The other thing that becomes a challenge if the referendum doesn't pass is ongoing building and maintenance expenses.
Otro problema que viene siendo, si no se aprueba el referéndum, son la necesidad de mantenimiento continuo de la escuela.
Because although we've been preventative and done repairs out of both buildings, out of our regular budget, the middle school is 20 years old. And so any necessary upgrades or system replacements at the middle school would come out of the regular budget, which obviously impacts the overall budget and the resources that we have for students.
Aunque hayamos sido cuidadosos de mantener los edificios de nuestro presupuesto regular, la escuela intermedia sí tiene 20 años y las mejoras y los arreglos esenciales entonces se tendrían que pagar de nuestro presupuesto ordinario, impactando directamente los recursos para los estudiantes.
So little did we know it in 2017 when the building referendum passed, but the passage of that building project by this community was the main reason that we were able to open on-site learning in August and be on-site with students 5 days a week. Our large classrooms and upgraded mechanical systems, as well as our technology, resource, and full-time school nurse made all of that possible.
No estábamos contando con los eventos de este año pasado, pero debido al referéndum que la comunidad aprobó en el año 2017, eso fue la razón que pudimos abrir la escuela para aprendizaje en persona en agosto. Nuestros salones grandes, los sistemas mecánicos renovados y nuestro sistema tecnológico, los recursos y la enfermera de tiempo completo, todo junto hizo posible que abriéramos en ese momento.
And we feel fortunate to be in a school district in a community that really values the importance of providing a high quality education for our children.
Nos sentimos afortunados de estar en una comunidad que le da mucha importancia a proporcionar un programa educativo bastante bueno para nuestros estudiantes.
So if you're looking for more information about the referendum, we have a number of resources on the referendum page on our website.
Si está buscando más información sobre el referéndum, tenemos muchos recursos en la página del referéndum en nuestro sitio web.
And certainly I always welcome any phone calls or emails if people have individual questions.
También siempre les invito a que me llamen o que me manden un correo electrónico si tienen preguntas individuales.
I think one of the challenges of an April election is that it's not always on everybody's calendar. So please encourage your friends and your family and neighbors to get out and vote on April 6th.
Una de las cosas difíciles de realizar un voto en abril es que no todo el mundo lo tiene en su calendario. Entonces, por favor, animen a sus amigos y sus vecinos que salgan a votar ese día.
And so now I'll open it up to any questions.
Ahora estamos listos para recibir sus preguntas.
Well, I do have the question of, since it is an April 6th vote, and I myself just received a brochure in the mail, which then again, like I mentioned in the beginning, did not have a link to this meeting. How have we been able to get the word out to the majority of people, not the small minority that attend the school?
So since we've, oh, sorry, Danica, go ahead.
It's fine. If you would like, I can translate her question. La pregunta se trata de cómo estamos informando a la comunidad de nuestro referéndum, si nada más hemos tenido un panfleto y un enlace personal en las escuelas.
So for a couple of months now, we've had a designated referendum page on our website. Obviously, while that is something that our school families reference, it's accessible to all in the larger community to search those resources out. All of the presentations that we've done, all of the any of the flyers, any of the information has been up really since about early or mid-February. And our mailer also was part of that, to get that information out. Almost everything that you heard tonight is also in that mailer. So that's certainly and that went to all of the families in our district, within our district.
And the mailer was beautiful. It was very, very well done, except it could have included the link. And then I'm also concerned about, a greater majority of our constituents who aren't tech savvy, who don't follow a website of any sort. You kind of left them out, because I could not see my neighbor of 72 years old going on this link, finding the referendum, scrolling down to find the link to get on here tonight.
Sure.
So she's going to rely on me to give her the information, which shouldn't have to be the case. I get it. COVID's kind of added a extra complication, but I think we've left out a huge population that is not aware of what is happening.
So even in the 2017 referendum for the building project, we relied very heavily on mail resources to get that information out. In fact, we did a couple different every door direct mail mailers with that referendum and the reminder to vote. We did have an on-site information session, but it was it did not bring in the droves.
Well, and we wouldn't have known about it unless we knew that there was a link on your website. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, unless I sought that out myself, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
And as you can see by the attendance tonight, many people didn't either seek it out or don't know.
Sure.
And that's a concern.
It's always a concern for us, Carla, in communicating with people that aren't directly associated with our school. Without a local newspaper that's consistent and non-subscription, obviously, it's a challenge. And so, we try to be active on our Facebook. I've put out different community messages. And there again, if you're not tech savvy, you're not logging into the Facebook. But we hope that the mailer will be a help. And with the listing of not only my email address, but my phone number, that was helpful to us the last time in having people that would just call and ask the questions. I think that's one of the advantages of being small, is that, and honestly, having been in this community for 20 years, even if you don't have kids in the school district, at some point in time, you may have come in contact with me and with my face. And so hopefully that takes a barrier out in making the phone call if you have a question.
Could I add something too, Kelly? Just so you know too, I also reached out to, the village, and they posted it on, their new digital sign that's downtown. The mobile gas station, we also reached out to them to get the information out that way as well. So, other than the mailers, our digital sign, things that we have within our own school system, we did our best to try and reach out to the community as well.
I have one question. The presentation was really clear and pretty much answered most of my questions, but I know that, if the referendum doesn't pass, kind of the impact, I think we all understand that. Is there some immediate need right now for projects? Like, do you have that list of projects that, the buildings are getting older, 20 years, do we have that list of projects so people know these are the things that really need to happen? Otherwise, it really will impact our staffing and our programming.
So we certainly we've got that 10-year building maintenance project list that's kind of graphed out and dependent on available funds, obviously. What worries me most is not the cosmetic things. I mean, certainly at the middle school, top on our list is our carpet is in lumps every spring and in splits every fall. So we'd like to replace the flooring, which is 20 years old. But what worries me most in a 20-year-old building is the mechanical systems, because while you can maintain mechanicals, they're 20 years old. And so this year we've had a water softener go out that was unexpected. And we maintain, all of our things. We had some significant pieces on one of our furnaces that went out. And so it's those kind of just aging facilities. And, when you're talking about aging mechanical systems, those add up real fast. And we found that in a different scenario, certainly, but in 2017, when we were talking about replacing the 1908 building and just balancing out the unexpected costs that come from maintaining an aging building and all of the unknowns that can come with that. More unknowns in that facility than in our 20-year-old facility, obviously, but it's the mechanical expenses. It's the things that we can't totally prevent or truly plan for, but have to address. We don't have choices if a furnace goes out. We don't have choices if some of the mechanicals in the venting in the walls or the ceilings go out, which, we've had some of that. We don't have a lot of choices if our lawn tractor, which is also 20 years old, goes out, if it's out beyond repair, and those are all substantial expenses. So, if it means not doing carpeting, that's unfortunate, but we can, walk over the bumps and plan for a better year. But when it's some of those other things that we can't plan for, that can really be detrimental. And then that money comes out of our budget, that it's the same budget that we service all of our school needs with. I also wanted to point, go ahead, Carla.
As you had mentioned, the number one thing is staffing. So I'm not concerned about carpeting wearing out. I want to make sure that this funding goes into get staffing so that we're getting the best teachers we can for our school system. I don't care, because nice carpeting doesn't really give us a good education, but those staff members need good wages that are competitive in the area. So we are drawing the best of the best and retaining them.
Yes.
Not just drawing them for a year, but retaining them long term.
Yes. I don't know what else to say. Yes, a resounding yes. Staff over carpet any day of the week. And we've been competitive with our salaries and salary increases in our compensation model, which started 5 years ago. That allowed us to give raises that exceeded the CPI. And we also did in those initial years some catch-up pay to get to make up for some of the salary deficits that were present after Act 10. We upgraded that compensation model 2 years ago and bumped the amount of maximum raise again. And so our teachers consistently get raises that are above that cost of living increase, even though we're a union district. But that's something that we really feel is important and valid, because we too want to retain, the best staff, and we know that it's the teachers in the classrooms that make the most difference for our students.
Can you answer why the cost would be less in the second and third year, and you say may drop off altogether?
Yeah, it has to do with the school funding formula and how the declining enrollment adjustment is made in that funding formula. That's something that comes after that first year, so it impacts our mill rate. We've also been able to do some refinancing of some current debt. So we know already that the board did that this fall, that 25, which is really a 22-cent increase, is probably going to be less than that even. But quarter is the highest, and then it falls off.
Because in 2017, when we did the building referendum, wasn't there an operational referenda also attached to that?
Mm-hmm. There was.
So that was like for 700,000 or 500,000?
No, it's for 255,000. That's a recurring referendum. So, and that was the maximum amount that we could utilize in that time to keep at no tax impact. And so that just becomes the recurring referendum becomes a part of your budget. It's not outside of that cap every year. So it's figured in a little bit differently. It kind of goes back to, and I hate talking about, well, I don't hate talking about 1993, but it seems ludicrous to link anything of school finance in 2021 to 1993. There seems like there's too much a disparity. Like there should have been a plan somehow to compensate for those caps of those revenue limit caps. But you have to think about what was happening in our village since 1993 and the just crazy amount of growth. And so even though the district through that whole time was dealing with this growing discrepancy between revenue and expenditures, it was being compensated by increasing enrollment. And so because our state funding formula is fueled by those student counts, we just didn't feel that in our overall budget as much as we would have if our population in the district and our population in our schools would have been stagnant from 1993. And so when you think about, where that growth kind of stopped, in that 2010-ish time, and where that enrollment started to kind of flatline, and then these families that had kids here now are still living here, but their students are in high school, so they're still with us in the community, but we don't have, there's not a place for them to move. There's not that available housing, that second step housing. And so that's contributed to that stagnation in enrollment and that lack of enrollment growth. And so
it showed by your numbers that it went down 79 students.
Yes.
Over the course of the chart that you showed us.
Yep.
How many of those 69 students, how many of those 69 students are open enrolled out? When you say our enrollment went down, are those students that enrolled out? Or just there's no student here anymore? There's no student here anymore.
Our open enrollment numbers, we still have more students that open enroll out of our district than come in, but that number of students that are open enrolling out has gone down as well.
So that 69 students does not include open enrollment.
Right, because students that open enroll out of a district are counted in that overall student count as resident students, right? But then they go somewhere else, so there's a stipend that goes somewhere else with them. So the state of Wisconsin views our kids that open enroll out as our students. They're in our count.
Okay, and how many do we have that open enroll out?
I don't know. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I can get back to you with that.
Okay, because that would be of interest to me to know, how many are leaving and why are they leaving?
Yeah.
More reason for a referendum to pass, so we make sure we keep good programming and staffing so people stay, right?
Yeah.
What's important to me is that number over the last 5 years has continued to decrease. And so, once a child open enrolls out at a 4K or kindergarten or even first grade, a lot of times they stay out through the duration because they get settled in their new home. And so some of the things that we've done to kind of make sure that people stay with us, start with us. We added a preschool program last year for our Champions program, and that's going to be increased this next year through the YMCA program, as well as before and after school care, so that if families are looking for a half or full day 3K program, they have that opportunity to do that right at our school. We've done a 4K wraparound program. The whole idea of bringing childcare to our district was something that started to help to give families that option of not having a half-day transition. So that was one of the reasons why we were losing kids right away in that 4K time, because parents were opening and rolling out to a full-day program. And so we took action on that and, created that 4-day wrap or 4K wrap to allow for a full-day program here. We also hired an early childhood special ed teacher to work with those students right here on our site, instead of having those students attend early childhood programming at Lakeland School. So, I think it's one of those things I think that has been effective in helping us to curtail some of those open enrollment students, because we want to capture them early and make them want to be Mustangs forever, right? Through get them while they're young and keep them in our system. And the other thing that we've worked with Lake Geneva on is to eliminate the busing that was happening to the middle school as a part of the Badger buses. That's not something that's necessarily allowed by the state or frowned upon. And so we've worked in partnership with Lake Geneva to make sure that our middle schoolers whose families do feel strongly about them attending a different school are showing their commitment to that by having to transport. And so that also stemmed that. And I think the other piece that, we're always looking at, and Vicki touched on it, is, what we want is our programming to be so high quality that regardless of family circumstances or where they work or where their cousins go to daycare or, who they know from the football team, we want our families to want to stay here. And we know that the best way to do that is to have high quality programming that offers lots of opportunities for our students and their families, and a lot of support for our families. I feel like one of the things that we've really done well during this last year of working through this pandemic has been to be a center of support for our families. We did supplemental food boxes from March into the summer. We partnered with the food pantry on the last couple of months to really assure that families were getting a seamless handoff to other services through the food pantry. We hosted a 12-hour hotline for those first 3 days of the school closure, just to ensure that if our families had questions, we were here 7 to 7. If somebody from the community had questions, we were here 7 to 7. Like we wanted to be the center for this time of uncertainty for our community. I think that's our role. In a small district, the schools have to be the center. And in order for us to be the center and be that level of support, that requires, some consistent programming. But I think that's the joy of it too, right? And it being a small town school and being a small town administrator, to be in the thick of it with families, whether it's, handing bricks out from the 1908 building or, putting supplemental food boxes in the back of people's cars, like that's who we are. And that's who our teachers are too. Our teachers, I would say, I would put our level of responsiveness against anyone. Our teachers are responsive to the needs of our families and our community, and they don't get compensated for all of those things. So we want to make sure that, we are consistent, because the level of quality that we want to have in our teaching staff, the kind of teachers that do those extra and feel that internal commitment, we have to make sure that we're a high quality organization that attracts the best talent.
Kelly, if you don't mind, if I add a couple of things too, as she was speaking about this, Carla, I know that you had spoken in the beginning that, you're not as entangled in the school as we are, because this is our everyday. And so I think as a community member, I think it's important to notice too, like, as the years have progressed, I've been with Brookwood for a long time as well. And to see the change in programming and the growth in us trying to reach out and branch out. I think that's really important. Even having Danica here tonight, you know, we know that this is a need for our Spanish speaking families. And this year, Kelly has really bolstered this programming to help our families that do only speak Spanish, to bring some of those families in, to, you know, have some diversity within our district and that support. And I think another piece that a lot of people also don't realize, because we're not the type to like get big heads about the things that we do, but I think sometimes it's important to share the things that we're doing. You know, other school districts that are around us do reach out to us, to Kelly specifically, to our technology, to our principals, to our leaders in regards to advice and what our school district is doing and why we chose the different things that we've chosen. And I think that those are things that are really important to notice over time. Me specifically have seen this growth within our district on trying to extend our programming and make things better for not just our families, but like our community. Like, we know our community is so important to us. And so I hope our community feels that and knows that too, that it's not just us in the school, but there are a lot of things we're trying to help develop and grow. And sometimes, you know, it takes time for community to understand the steps of what we're doing and how that impacts everyone as a whole.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly that there are great things happening. My complaint, or if you want to call it a complaint, concern, is that you haven't shared that. And so people may go to the polls and vote no because they don't know what you just told me. And they don't have access to what we're doing right now. And they weren't informed enough of all of those great things to make a vote for yes. When that needed, I think that just needed to be pushed a little bit more and brought to their attention, and not necessarily through social media, because we're talking about people that either don't have access to social media or don't utilize it if they do have access. So that's where my concern lies, is that if that's the only means we're reaching out, besides the flyer we did get. But
and I think it's important, people like you coming to this, you know, Carla, you said that you're here advocating for your neighbor. Like, you know, I think times have changed, you know, and there are people that are not technology forward, but, you know, on all the flyers, it did have Kelly's direct contact, that information. And, you know, if you hear other people in the community that want the printout or want to meet with Kelly one-on-one, or even talk to the teachers about it, you know, like, we have district meetings to talk about it. So I think it's awesome that you're here tonight and to show the support and to support even your neighbor and other neighbors. But feedback is so important too. Like, that also helps us grow overall as a school district. So it's awesome that you're here tonight, and thank you for your feedback.
I just wish, it's kind of late now because it's already next Tuesday, but I just wish there were a way to reach more people. I don't know how you could do that during a pandemic. That's the difficult thing. But I feel like a lot of them are not informed.
We are working also with our voter rolls to make calls as well. You know, the phone numbers aren't on the voter rolls, but most of them can be found. And so I have some teachers that are doing some calling after hours to make contact.
I also think we, you know, being in a school district myself forever and going through different referendums, sometimes the people who show up to these are sometimes the most educated about the referendum, because I do think community members already kind of know and they support the school, and sometimes they're not really interested in coming to these events because they support and believe in what the school is providing. And, you know, they already feel informed possibly. So I don't think this is kind of a representative of people interested or not interested in what's happening in the school. I just think it's society and people not getting involved in things, unfortunately, right?
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you, Carla and Sean and Sarah, for attending tonight. Thank you, Danica, for providing us with the Spanish translation, although it's occurring to me we didn't let you translate any of the answers. So,
I was brainstorming though. I didn't want to interrupt. You were having a great, productive conversation. So we'll figure something out.
We will. We will. So thank you all for coming tonight, and have a good rest of your evening.